They called her a monster for surviving. He called her kin for the same reason. The village had branded her long before the scars ever formed. Elena Verona was 23 when the fever took her family, mother, father, 2 younger brothers, all within a single winter week. The priest said it was God's will. The neighbors said it was her fault. A woman who lived alone. A woman who refused to remarry after her betrothed drowned in the river. A woman who read books and spoke to no one and kept candles burning past midnight. They whispered witch behind cupped hands. They painted red crosses on her door. They left dead animals on her doorstep until she stopped opening it at all. Elena learned to live in silence. She learned to make her own bread, mend her own clothes, survive on the kindness of no one. She learned that survival was its own kind of monstrosity, that to endure when the world wanted you gone was the greatest blasphemy of all. And then, one November night, the village burned. She didn't start the fire, but when she stumbled from her cottage, smoke filling her lungs, flames licking the edges of the square, the survivors saw her standing in the ash and decided it was proof enough. They dragged her to the church, bound her wrists with iron chains, threw her to the stone floor before the altar, and called for the priest to absolve her sins before they hanged her at dawn. Elena didn't beg, she didn't pray. She stared at the crucifix above the altar and felt nothing but the cold weight of inevitability. So this is how it ends. But dawn never came. Instead, the church doors opened, slow, deliberate, soundless, and a figure stepped into the candlelight. He was tall, dark-haired, dressed in black wool and silver clasps that caught the firelight like stars. His face was beautiful in the way ruins are beautiful, sharp, ancient, carved by time and loss. His eyes were gray, no, darker than gray, the color of storm clouds before lightning strikes. The priest stammered a prayer. The villagers backed toward the walls. The stranger ignored them all. He walked straight to Elena, knelt beside her, and said, in a voice like smoke and silk, "You've been accused of monstrosity. Tell me, do you believe you deserve to die?" Elena met his gaze. Her voice was hoarse but steady. "I've done nothing but survive. If that makes me a monster, then yes, I am one." The stranger smiled, slow, sad. "Then we are the same." He touched her chains, and they shattered like glass. The priest screamed. The villagers surged forward, but the stranger rose to his full height, and the air in the church grew cold, so cold that breath turned to fog, that candles flickered and died, that grown men fell to their knees gasping. "She is under my protection now," the stranger said softly. "Touch her, and you will learn what monstrosity truly means." He offered Elena his hand. She hesitated only a heartbeat, then she took it. And the world she knew ended. Subscribe if you believe survival is its own kind of salvation, and that sometimes the monster is the one who refuses to let you die. They rode through the forest in silence. Elena sat before him on a black stallion that moved like liquid shadow, its hooves barely disturbing the frost-covered ground. The stranger, Constantine, held the reins with one hand, the other resting lightly at her waist to steady her. His touch was cold, not unpleasant, just absent of warmth. She should have been terrified. She should have screamed, fought, demanded answers. Instead, she felt only exhaustion and curiosity. "Where are you taking me?" she finally asked. "Somewhere they will not follow." "Why?" Constantine's voice came from just behind her ear, low and deliberate. "Because I have spent 3 centuries watching innocents burn for crimes they did not commit. And tonight, I grew tired of it." 3 centuries. Elena turned her head slightly, trying to see his face. "You're not human." "No." "What are you?" A pause, then, "A mistake that refuses to die." The forest grew denser, darker. The trees twisted into shapes that seemed almost deliberate, as if the woods themselves were watching. Constantine guided the horse through paths that shouldn't exist, over streams that reflected no moonlight, past ruins half swallowed by moss and time. Finally, they emerged into a clearing. A manor stood at its center. It was beautiful in the way forgotten things are beautiful. Stone walls covered in ivy, tall windows with iron lattices, a courtyard fountain long dry but still elegant. Candlelight flickered in the upper windows. Smoke rose from a single chimney. Someone lived here. Constantine dismounted first, then lifted Elena down as if she weighed nothing. His hands lingered at her waist a moment longer than necessary. Then he stepped back, as if catching himself. "This is your sanctuary," he said, "for as long as you need it." Elena looked up at the manor, then back at him. "You live here alone?" "I have lived here alone for 200 years, until tonight." "Why did you save me?" Constantine met her gaze. His eyes were impossible, old and young at once, filled with something Elena couldn't name. Grief, maybe, or recognition. "Because," he said quietly, "you reminded me of someone I failed to save long ago, and I have learned that the only way to live with eternity is to correct the mistakes you cannot forget." He turned toward the manor, his coat billowing slightly in the wind. "Come. You are safe here. I will explain everything in time." Elena hesitated at the threshold. Every instinct told her this was madness, that she should run, that whatever Constantine was, he was dangerous. But the village had called her a monster for surviving, and this man, this creature, had called her kin. So she stepped inside, and the door closed softly behind her. The interior of the manor was a paradox. Outside, it looked abandoned. Inside, it was alive. Candles burned in iron sconces along stone walls. Velvet curtains framed windows overlooking gardens that shouldn't bloom in November but did. Roses, white and red, tangled with ivy and moonlight. A fire crackled in the hearth. Books lined every surface, ancient tomes with cracked leather spines, journals with pages yellowed by time, maps of countries that no longer existed. Constantine led her to a sitting room where a table had been set with bread, cheese, wine, and fruit that looked impossibly fresh. "Eat," he said. "You've had nothing since yesterday." Elena stared at the food, then at him. "You don't eat." "No." "But you prepared this for me." "Yes." She sat slowly, her body aching from the chains, the smoke, the terror of the night. She tore a piece of bread and ate mechanically, watching Constantine as he stood by the fire, his back to her, hands clasped behind him. "You said you failed to save someone," Elena said. "Who?" Constantine's shoulders tensed. For a long moment, he didn't answer. Then, "Her name was Irina, my wife, 300 years ago." Elena set down the bread. "We were married in the spring." Constantine continued, his voice distant. "She was a healer. The village loved her. She saved children from fever, set broken bones, delivered babies in the dead of winter. But when the plague came and people began to die despite her best efforts, they turned on her, called her a witch, said she had made a pact with darkness." He turned to face Elena. His eyes were raw. "I was a soldier. I was away when they came for her. By the time I returned, they had already drowned her in the river, tied stones to her feet, and watched her sink. They said if she was innocent, God would save her." Elena's throat tightened. "I pulled her body from the water," Constantine whispered. "I held her. I begged God, the devil, anyone who would listen, bring her back. Let me trade my life for hers. Let me undo this." "And someone answered," Elena said softly. Constantine nodded. "A creature older than memory. It offered me a choice, die with her or live forever and ensure no other innocent suffers her fate. I chose eternity. I chose to become what they feared she was, a monster with the power to protect the helpless." He looked at Elena with an intensity that made her breath catch. But I was too late to save her, and I have spent 3 centuries trying to atone for that failure. So when I saw you in that church, accused, bound, abandoned by everyone, I saw Irina. And I swore I would not fail again. The room was silent, except for the crackling fire. Elena stood slowly, crossed the space between them, stopped just close enough to see the faint lines at the corners of his eyes, the only evidence of the man he'd once been. "You didn't fail her," Elena said. "You became exactly what she would have wanted, someone who refuses to let the innocent burn." Konstantin closed his eyes. A single tremor ran through him. "Thank you," he whispered. Elena reached out, hesitated, then placed her hand over his. It was cold, but it was real. CTA. And now, I invite you to leave a trace of your presence in the comments. Tell us where in the world you're watching from and the exact hour you hear this story. We wish to know how far these immortal confessions travel, and at what moments of the night they find you. Days passed like whispered secrets. Elena learned the rhythms of the manor, the way Konstantin disappeared at dawn, returning only after sunset, the way he moved through the halls like smoke, soundless and deliberate, the way he watched her from doorways when he thought she wasn't looking, as if memorizing her existence. She learned he did not sleep, did not eat, did not age, but he read. He played piano in a forgotten music room, compositions so beautiful they made her chest ache. He tended the garden at midnight, speaking softly to the roses as if they were old friends. He was lonely. She understood that. One evening, Elena found him in the library, standing before a portrait she hadn't noticed before. A young woman with dark hair and gentle eyes, dressed in medieval clothing, a single white rose in her hands. "Irina," Elena said softly. Konstantin didn't turn. "Yes." Elena studied the portrait. The woman's expression was serene, kind, the kind of face that made you believe the world could be good. She was beautiful. She was everything. Elena hesitated, then asked the question that had haunted her for days. "Do you still love her?" Konstantin's jaw tightened. "I will love her until the stars die." "Then why save me?" Elena's voice broke slightly. "Why bring me here? Why care what happens to a stranger when your heart belongs to someone 3 centuries gone?" Konstantin finally turned. His eyes were devastated. "Because loving her taught me that some souls are worth protecting, even if you gain nothing in return, because she would have saved you without hesitation. And because—" He stopped, looked away. "Because?" Elena pressed. "Because when I look at you, I remember what it felt like to be human," Konstantin whispered. "To feel anger at injustice. To feel hope that one life saved might matter. To feel anything other than the cold weight of eternity." He stepped closer, close enough that Elena could see the faint silver threading through his dark hair, the way his hands trembled slightly before he clasped them behind his back. "You remind me that I am more than the curse, that I am still the man who would burn the world to protect someone who cannot protect themselves." Elena's breath caught. "Konstantin, do not pity me," he said sharply, then softer. "Please, I do not deserve it." But Elena didn't feel pity. She felt recognition. She reached up slowly, giving him time to pull away, and touched his face. His skin was cool, marble smooth, impossibly still. "You're not a monster," she said. "You're a man who refused to let grief destroy his capacity for mercy." Konstantin closed his eyes, leaned into her touch as if it were sunlight after centuries of darkness. "Stay," he whispered. "As long as you wish. This house has been a tomb for too long. Let it be a sanctuary instead." Elena's thumb traced the line of his jaw. "I'll stay," she said. And something in the manor shifted, as if the walls themselves exhaled in relief. Winter deepened. Snow blanketed the forest, muffling the world in white silence. The manor became an island, isolated, timeless, suspended between the mortal world and something older. Elena began to heal. Not just her body, though the bruises from the chains faded, the smoke left her lungs, the exhaustion lifted, but something deeper. The part of her that had learned to expect cruelty began to unlearn it. The part that had armored itself in silence began to open. Constantine was patient, careful. He never touched her without permission, never entered her room uninvited, never asked questions she wasn't ready to answer. But he was always near, in the library when she read, in the garden when she walked, in the music room when she sat by the piano and listened to him play Chopin nocturnes that sounded like prayers. They talked, about everything, about nothing. Elena told him about her family, the way her mother hummed while cooking, the way her father carved wooden toys for her brothers, the way she had felt their absence like missing limbs, phantom pain that never stopped. Constantine told her about the centuries, the empires that rose and fell, the wars he witnessed, the people he saved, the ones he couldn't. "Do you ever regret it?" Elena asked one night as they sat before the fire, snow falling beyond the windows. "Choosing eternity?" Constantine stared into the flames. "Every day." "Why?" "Because immortality is not freedom. It is witnessing everyone you love turn to dust while you remain unchanged. It is watching the world forget the things worth remembering. It is being a monument to loss." He turned to her, firelight reflecting in his gray eyes. "But if I had not chosen it, I would not have been in that church. I would not have saved you. And that," his voice roughened, "that would have been unbearable." Elena's heart clenched. "You don't even know me." "I know you survived when they wanted you dead. I know you refused to beg for mercy from those who had none. I know you are kind even after the world taught you cruelty." He paused. "That is enough." Elena looked down at her hands, scarred from years of hard work, nails broken, palms calloused, peasant hands, survivor hands. "I'm not special, Constantine. You are to me." The words hung in the air between them, dangerous, tender, undeniable. Elena met his gaze. "What happens when I grow old? When I die?" Constantine's expression shuddered. "Then I will mourn you as I mourned Irina, and I will remember you for the rest of eternity. And it will be worth it." "Why?" "Because some souls are worth carrying forever." Elena's throat tightened. She wanted to tell him he was wrong, that she was just a woman who survived because dying seemed harder, that he was romanticizing her existence. But the truth was simpler. She didn't want to die anymore, and that terrified her, because it meant she had something to lose. Spring arrived like a resurrection. The snow melted, the garden exploded with life. Roses climbed the stone walls in cascades of white and crimson. The fountain began to flow again, clear water over moss-covered stone, the sound like whispered secrets. Elena spent her days in the garden, hands in the soil, sun on her face. Constantine watched from the shadows of the manor, never venturing into daylight, but always present. She had stopped asking when she could leave, because she didn't want to. This place, this impossible sanctuary with its immortal guardian and its timeless peace, had become home in a way the village never was. But the question she hadn't asked burned in her chest every time she caught Constantine staring at her as if memorizing her face. One evening, as they walked through the garden under a sky bruised purple and gold, Elena finally spoke it aloud. "Could you turn me?" Constantine stopped, turned to her slowly. "What?" "Into what you are," Elena said, her voice steady despite the fear threading through it. "Could you make me immortal?" Constantine's face went blank, then anguished. "No." "Why not?" Because I will not curse another soul with this existence. I will not condemn you to watch the world decay while you remain frozen in time. I will not, his voice broke, I will not make you into the very thing I have hated being for 300 years. Elena stepped closer. What if I'm asking? Then I am refusing. Why? Elena's voice rose. You said I was worth protecting. You said some souls are worth carrying forever. If that's true, then why would you let me die when you have the power to prevent it? Constantine's hands clenched into fists. Because immortality is not salvation, Elena. It is damnation dressed in eternity, and I love you too much to damn you. The words fell between them like stones into still water. I love you. Elena's breath caught. Constantine. I have loved you since the moment you refused to beg for mercy, he whispered. I have loved you watching you heal. I have loved you listening to you laugh. I have loved you every moment you have existed in my awareness, and that is precisely why I will not turn you. Tears burned Elena's eyes. Then you'll watch me grow old. You'll watch me die. Yes. And you'll be alone again. Yes. How can you call that love? Constantine reached out, slowly, carefully, and cupped her face in his hands. His touch was cold, but his eyes were blazing. Because love is not possession. It is wanting the best for someone even when it destroys you. And you, Elena Verona, deserve a human life, a mortal life, children, grandchildren. A death that means something because it has an end. I don't want that, Elena choked out. I want you. Constantine's jaw trembled. You say that now. But in 50 years, when you are old and I am unchanged, you will resent me, and I will deserve it. No. Yes. He pressed his forehead to hers. So, I will love you as a mortal. I will protect you, cherish you, and when your time comes, I will let you go, because that is the only mercy I can offer you. Elena pulled back, tears streaming down her face. That's not mercy. That's cowardice. Constantine flinched as if struck. Maybe, he whispered, but it is all I have. He turned and walked back toward the manor, leaving Elena standing alone in the garden as twilight fell and the first stars appeared. She didn't follow. She stood among the roses, white and red, living and dying, beautiful because they were temporary, and understood for the first time why Constantine called immortality a curse. Because love without loss was meaningless, and loss without love was unbearable, and he had chosen to bear both. If this story has already captured you, leave a like. It helps the voices of those who chose eternity reach more hearts. Elena didn't sleep that night. She paced her room, Constantine's words echoing in her mind. I love you too much to damn you. As if love were a reason to refuse someone their choice, as if he alone could decide what she deserved. She had spent her entire life being told what she was: witch, monster, burden, survivor. She had been defined by others' fear, others' judgment, others' mercy. Not anymore. At midnight, she descended the stairs and found Constantine in the music room. He sat at the piano but wasn't playing, just staring at the keys as if they held answers he'd lost centuries ago. I've made my decision, Elena said. Constantine didn't turn. Elena, I'm not asking for your permission, she interrupted. I'm telling you what I choose, and I choose this. I will stay with you. I will live my mortal life here, and when my time comes, I will die knowing I spent it with someone who saw me as I am, not as the world wanted me to be. Constantine's shoulders tensed. And then? And then you will mourn me. You will remember me, and you will find another soul worth saving, because that is who you are. He finally turned. His face was devastated. I cannot do this again. You won't have to, Elena said softly, because I'm not Irina. I'm not asking you to save me from death. I'm asking you to let me live before it comes. She crossed the room and knelt beside him, taking his cold hands in hers. You've spent 300 years atoning for failing her, but loving me, truly loving me, means accepting that I will die. That death is not failure, that I am choosing this life with you, knowing how it ends. Constantine's eyes glistened. How can you ask me to watch you fade? How can you ask me to live without knowing what it means to be loved completely? Elena's voice broke. I was alone, Constantine. I was dying in that church, not from the noose they would have used, but from years of being treated like I didn't deserve to exist. And you gave me sanctuary, safety, something I never had. She pressed his hand to her chest, over her beating heart. This heart will stop one day, but until then, it beats for you, and that is worth more than eternity as something I'm not. Constantine closed his eyes. A single tear tracked down his face, the first she'd ever seen from him. You are the bravest soul I have ever known, he whispered. Then be brave with me, Elena said. Love me as I am, for as long as I have. Constantine pulled her close, not with supernatural strength, but with human desperation. He buried his face in her hair and held her as if she were the only thing anchoring him to the world. I will, he breathed. God help me, I will. Elena wrapped her arms around him and felt, for the first time since her family died, that she was home. Not in a place, in a person, even if that person would outlive her by centuries. CTA. Comment eternal if you'd choose love with an expiration date over loneliness that lasts forever. Time moved differently after that night. Not slower, not faster, just differently, as if each moment carried more weight because both of them knew it was finite. As if the awareness of mortality made everything sharper. The taste of wine, the scent of roses, the sound of rain against ancient windows. Constantine stopped hiding in shadows. He walked with Elena through the garden at twilight, his hand resting at the small of her back, guiding her past thorns and uneven stones. He taught her to dance in the ballroom, the vast, echoing space that hadn't heard music in 2 centuries, laughing when she stepped on his feet, spinning her until she was breathless and dizzy and alive. He read to her from books in languages she didn't know, ancient Greek poetry about love that survived death, Persian verses about gardens that bloomed in darkness, Latin prayers that had been whispered by monks long turned to dust. His voice transformed the words into living things, and Elena would close her eyes and let the cadence wash over her, understanding not the language but the emotion beneath it. Elena, in turn, made the manor breathe again. She learned to cook, not the simple peasant meals of her childhood, but elaborate dishes she invented from instinct and experimentation. Constantine would watch from the kitchen doorway, fascinated by the mundane ritual of chopping vegetables, kneading bread, tasting and adjusting until something ordinary became extraordinary. He couldn't eat, but he would sit at the table while she did, watching her face as she tasted her own creation, and somehow that was enough. She painted the manor's crumbling walls, not to restore them to former glory, but to give them new life. Vines and flowers in bright colors that made the stone look less like a tomb and more like a sanctuary. She filled vases with wild flowers from the forest, purple thistles, white Queen Anne's lace, yellow buttercups that shouldn't grow in shadow but did. She sang while she worked, old songs her mother taught her. Melodies passed down through generations of women who survived by making beauty in dark places. Folk songs about lost loves and found homes, about seasons turning and life continuing despite everything. And Constantine would stop whatever he was doing, reading, walking, simply existing, and just listen, as if her voice were the only sound that mattered in 300 years of silence. She made the manor alive again. And in doing so, she made him feel alive too. They didn't speak of the future, not in concrete terms, not in calendars or countdowns or medical realities. They lived in the present, in morning light filtering through ancient windows, in evening conversations before the fire, where they debated philosophy and poetry and whether roses were more beautiful because they died. In the small miracle of her hand in his, as they walked through rooms that had been silent for 2 centuries. But time, as it always does, moved forward. Elena turned 25, then 30. Her face remained smooth, her body strong, but Constantine noticed the small changes, a faint line at the corner of her eye when she smiled too wide, a silver thread in her dark hair that caught the light like spun starlight. The way she moved slightly slower after working in the garden all day, her back aching in ways it hadn't before. He said nothing, but Elena knew he saw, knew he catalogued every change like a scholar studying a precious manuscript that was slowly fading. She would catch him staring sometimes, not with sadness, but with an intensity that made her breath catch, as if he were memorizing her, as if each version of her was sacred and needed to be preserved in memory before it was lost. The seasons turned. Spring became summer, became autumn, became winter, became spring again. 5 years passed, then 10, then 15. Elena turned 35, then 40. The lines at her eyes deepened. More silver appeared in her hair. Her hands, once smooth despite hard work, developed the raised veins and prominent knuckles of age. Her body changed in ways that would have terrified the girl she'd been, but the woman she'd become barely noticed. Because Constantine still looked at her the way he had that first night in the church, as if she were the most precious thing in his 300-year existence. They established rituals. Every Sunday, they would walk to the edge of the forest where wildflowers grew in impossible profusion, and Elena would gather armfuls to fill the manor. Constantine would carry the basket, and they would talk about everything and nothing. The books they were reading, the dreams Elena had the night before, the memories Constantine carried from centuries past. Every full moon, they would sit on the terrace, and Constantine would tell her stories about the people he'd saved over the centuries. The girl who'd been accused of witchcraft in Salem, the Jewish scholar he'd hidden during the Inquisition, the slave family he'd helped escape north to freedom. Elena would listen, and sometimes she would cry for the ones he couldn't save, and Constantine would hold her and remember why he'd chosen this impossible existence. Every winter solstice, they would light candles in every window of the manor, hundreds of them, until the whole building blazed like a star in the darkness. It was Elena's idea, her way of honoring both Irina and the girl Elena herself had been. Lights in the darkness for souls who'd survived when the world wanted them extinguished. And every night, without fail, Constantine would kiss her goodnight as if it were the last time, as if each kiss needed to contain all the words he couldn't say. I love you. I'm terrified. I'm grateful. I'm sorry. I would choose you again. One evening, as they sat on the terrace watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of fire and gold, Elena broke the comfortable silence. Will you tell me about the others? Constantine turned to her, the fading light catching in his gray eyes and making them look almost silver. What others? The ones you saved over the centuries. I can't be the only one. Constantine was quiet for a long moment. His hands, which had been resting on the stone balustrade, tightened slightly. Then he sighed, a very human sound from a very inhuman creature. There have been others, he admitted, many others. A girl accused of poisoning a nobleman who tried to force himself on her. She was 14, terrified, guilty only of defending herself. A Jewish family during the Inquisition, hiding in a cellar while soldiers searched house by house. A slave escaping north with her 3 children, running through winter woods with dogs on her trail. A soldier who refused to execute civilians and was sentenced to death for disobedience. Elena listened, her heart aching for these people she'd never met. What happened to them? I gave them sanctuary, protected them until it was safe to leave. The girl I sent to a convent in another country with forged papers and enough gold to start again. The family I hid for 2 years, until the Inquisition moved to another region, then helped them reach Amsterdam. The mother and her children, I guided north myself, all the way to Canada, and made sure they had a house and resources. The soldier, Constantine's voice caught. The soldier died of infection before I could heal him. I buried him in this garden. Elena reached over and took his hand. You couldn't save them all. No, Constantine whispered. I couldn't. But you tried, every time. Every time. Elena was quiet, processing this. Then, what happened to them after you sent them away? I don't know. I never followed, never checked. They went back to their lives, and I went back to mine. You never saw them again? No. Elena looked at him, really looked at him. This impossible man who'd lived for centuries saving people and then letting them go. Never asking for gratitude or recognition, or even memory. Why did you let me stay? Constantine met her gaze. His eyes were soft, ancient, infinitely sad, and infinitely tender all at once. Because with the others, I was fulfilling a duty, a penance, an obligation I'd taken upon myself when I chose immortality. I saved them because it was the right thing to do, because Irina would have wanted me to, because it gave my cursed existence meaning. He paused, lifting her hand to his lips and kissing her knuckles gently. But with you, Elena, with you, I wasn't just saving someone. I was choosing to live again, to feel again, to risk again. The others were people I protected. You are the person I love. Elena's throat tightened with emotion. Do you regret it? Letting yourself love me when you know how it ends? Never. Constantine reached out and tucked a strand of silver-threaded hair behind her ear, his touch impossibly gentle. You gave me 20 years of feeling human. 20 years of remembering what it means to wake up and want to exist. 20 years of purpose that wasn't just penance, but joy. Do you know how rare that is? How precious. I would endure another 300 years of solitude for these 20 years with you. Elena's eyes burned with tears. Only 20? Constantine's hand stilled. His whole body went rigid. What? Elena took his hand and placed it over her abdomen, holding it there. The doctor in the village confirmed it last week. I'm pregnant. For a moment, Constantine didn't move, didn't breathe, didn't even seem to exist, as if time itself had stopped in recognition of this impossible moment. Then his eyes widened, his mouth opened, and a sound escaped him that Elena had never heard before. A sob mixed with laughter mixed with something that sounded like prayer. Elena! I know we never discussed it, she rushed on, suddenly nervous despite his reaction. I know it complicates everything. I know you'll outlive this child, just like you'll outlive me, and maybe that's cruel, maybe I'm being selfish, but I wanted you to know. I wanted. Constantine pulled her into his arms, so suddenly she gasped. He held her as if she might disappear, as if she were made of mist and moonlight instead of flesh and bone. His body trembled against hers. Actually trembled, this creature who was stronger than 10 men, who'd fought in wars and survived plagues and witnessed empires fall. A child, he whispered into her hair. You're giving me a child. You're not angry? Angry? Constantine pulled back just enough to see her face, and Elena saw that tears were streaming down his cheeks, actual tears, which she'd only seen once before. His expression was transformed, younger, brighter, alive in a way that made him look almost mortal. Elena, I have existed for 300 years without purpose beyond penance. 300 years of surviving because I'd made a promise to protect the innocent, but never believing I deserved anything good for myself. And you have given me love, home, laughter, reasons to wake at sunset and be grateful I'm still here. His hand moved to cover hers on her abdomen, pressing gently. and now you're giving me a future. Not my future. I have centuries of that stretching ahead whether I want them or not. But a future that matters. A person who will exist because we existed together. Someone who will carry both of us forward into time. The child will be mortal, Elena said softly. I know. You'll lose them too, just like you'll lose me. I know. Konstantin cupped her face in both hands, his gray eyes blazing with something fierce and tender. But they will exist because of us. Because you chose to love a monster. Because I chose to love you back. Because for 20 years, we made something sacred out of borrowed time. And that child, that precious, mortal, temporary child, will be proof that love doesn't need forever to be real. He kissed her then, slowly, reverently, as if she were made of starlight and prayer and every holy thing he'd stopped believing in 3 centuries ago. And in that moment, Elena understood something she hadn't before. Konstantin had spent 300 years believing immortality was his curse. But the real curse would have been living those 300 years without ever feeling this. The weight of a life beginning, the terror and joy of creating something that would die, the humbling knowledge that mortality made everything precious. She was giving him what he'd lost when he became immortal. The ability to be human again, not in body, but in heart. Elena died on a spring morning, with roses blooming outside her window and her daughter's hand clasped in hers. She was 46. Her hair had gone completely silver, shining like moonlight against the white pillow. Her face carried lines earned from 23 years of laughter and sunlight and being loved so completely that aging felt like an honor rather than a defeat. Her hands, once strong from survival, were now fragile, bird bone delicate, veins prominent, skin thin as parchment. But her eyes were still bright, still fierce, still utterly alive until the very end. The illness had come quickly. 1 month she was working in the garden, teaching her daughter which herbs healed and which harmed. The next, she could barely rise from bed. The doctor from the village, one of the few people who knew of the manor's existence, had been kind but honest. Days, he'd said quietly. Maybe a week. I'm sorry. Konstantin had not left her side since. He sat on the right side of the bed, holding Elena's hand, his face a mask of controlled grief. He had promised her months ago, when the first symptoms appeared, that he would be strong, that he would not fall apart, that he would survive this because that's what she needed from him. He had lied, but he would do it anyway, because Elena had asked. On her left, their daughter Irina held her other hand. 23 years old, with her mother's dark hair and her father's gray eyes and a spirit that somehow combined both their strengths. She was crying silently, tears streaming down her face, trying desperately to be brave and failing beautifully. Elena looked between them, these two people who were her entire world, and smiled. It hurt to smile. Everything hurt now. Breathing, thinking, existing. But some things were worth the pain. Tell her, Elena whispered, her voice barely audible even in the quiet room. Konstantin leaned closer. What, my love? Tell her everything, all of it. Don't let her forget. Konstantin's jaw trembled. He looked at Irina, then back at Elena. She knows. Tell her anyway. Elena's fingers tightened weakly around his. Promise me, when I'm gone. Tell her the truth. About you, about me, about how we found each other. She deserves to know. I promise. Elena turned her head slightly, looking at her daughter. Irina was so beautiful, so young, so full of all the life that Elena was about to surrender. Irina, Elena breathed. I'm here, Mama. Listen to me, my darling girl. Your father... She paused, gathering strength. Your father is the best man I have ever known. He is kind and gentle and impossibly brave, and he will live long after I'm gone. Centuries, maybe. Forever, perhaps. Irina's eyes widened slightly. She knew her father was different, had known since childhood that he didn't eat, didn't age, move through the world like smoke, but they'd never spoken of it directly. I know he's different, Irina said carefully. He's immortal, Elena said bluntly. He's been alive for over 300 years, and he will be alive for 300 more. Irina looked at Constantine, who nodded slowly. I don't understand, Irina whispered. You will. Elena smiled. Your father will explain everything when I'm gone. But right now, I need you to understand something else. I chose this. I chose him. I chose you. I chose this life, this love, this family, knowing exactly how it would end. And I would do it again. Mama, let me finish. Elena's breathing was labored now. You will grow old, Irina. You will have children, grandchildren. You will live and love and die, just as I am dying now. And your father will be there for all of it. He will protect you, guide you, love you. And then, when your time comes, he will let you go, just as he's letting me go. Tears flowed freely down Irina's face. How can you ask that of him? Because it's who he is. Elena turned to Constantine, her eyes filled with love and sorrow and gratitude. Isn't it, my darling? You're the man who loves so fiercely that you endure the unbearable. The man who chooses to care even when caring means inevitable loss. Constantine couldn't speak, could only nod. Elena squeezed his hand with what little strength remained. Tell her our story. Tell her everything. And when you're done, I want you to make me a promise. Anything. Don't let mourning stop you from living. Constantine's composure finally cracked. A sob escaped him, raw and broken and utterly human. Elena, promise me, she insisted, her voice gaining strength for just a moment. Promise me you'll keep this place alive, that you'll let Irina visit with her children, that you'll teach them about beauty and mercy and love, that you'll remember me, yes, but that you won't turn this manor back into a tomb. I promise. And promise me one more thing. What? Elena smiled, a real smile, bright despite the pain. That you'll keep saving people, that you'll find others like me, broken, abandoned, accused of monstrosity, and you'll show them what you showed me, that survival is sacred, that they deserve to exist, that monsters are just people the world didn't know how to love. Constantine pressed his forehead to her hand. I promise. All of it. Everything. Good. Elena's eyes were closing now, her breathing slowing. Then I can go. I can let go, because I know you'll be all right. Both of you. You'll remember me, honor me, and then you'll keep living, and that's all I need. Mama, please. Irina's voice broke. Shh, my darling girl, don't be sad. I've had a beautiful life. More beautiful than I ever dreamed possible when I was chained in that church, waiting to die. She looked at Constantine one last time. You saved me. In every way a person can be saved, and I will love you until my last breath. And then, Constantine whispered, and then I'll wait for you. However long it takes. Centuries if I must. And when your time finally comes, when you've saved everyone who needs saving and loved everyone who needs loving, I'll be there. Irina will be there, and will welcome you home. She took one more breath, then exhaled slowly, and didn't inhale again. The room fell silent. For a moment, neither Constantine nor Irina moved, as if by staying perfectly still they could stop time, could prevent this moment from becoming real. Then Irina broke, sobbing against her mother's still hand, and Constantine, ancient, immortal, invincible Constantine, folded over Elena's body and wept like the human man he'd once been 300 years ago. The funeral was small. Constantine buried Elena in the garden, beneath the white roses she'd planted their first year together. The stone marker he carved himself, working through 3 straight nights with hands that didn't tire and eyes that didn't blur, channeling his grief into every careful letter. Elena Verona, born a survivor, died beloved. She called him human when the world called him monster. She gave him home when he'd forgotten what it meant. She lived fully, died peacefully, and made eternity bearable. 1979, 2025. The doctor came. So did the priest from the village, a young man who'd heard rumors about the manor, but had never seen it until now. He said prayers over Elena's grave, and Konstantin listened without believing, but grateful nonetheless, because Elena would have wanted it. And then they left. And Konstantin and Irina were alone. They sat in the library that evening, fire crackling in the hearth, neither speaking for a long time. Finally, Irina broke the silence. "Tell me, everything," like she asked. So Konstantin did. He told her about the church where he'd found Elena, about the 3 centuries before that, about Irina's namesake, the wife he'd loved and lost, the woman whose death had cursed him with immortality, about the bargain he'd made and the people he'd saved and the loneliness that had consumed him until Elena appeared. He told her about falling in love again despite swearing he never would, about the choice Elena made to stay despite knowing she would die, about the 23 years they'd built together in this impossible place. And he told her what Elena had wanted her daughter to know above all else. "Your mother chose this, chose me, chose you, knowing I would outlive her, knowing you would inherit that burden. She chose it because she believed love was worth the inevitable loss. And she was right." Irina was quiet for a long time, processing everything. "What happens now?" she finally asked. "Now you live," Konstantin said simply. "You marry, have children, build a life in the world beyond these walls, and I will be here when you need me, a sanctuary, a guardian, a grandfather to your children, and when your time comes, you'll let me go," Irina finished softly. "Like you let her go." "Yes, and you'll be alone again." Konstantin looked at the fire, his gray eyes reflecting flames that couldn't warm him. "Perhaps, but I will have had this. Your mother, you, whatever family you build. That's more than I ever expected, more than I deserve." Irina stood and crossed to him, put her hand on his shoulder, her touch warm, living, proof that Elena's legacy continued. "You deserve everything, Papa. Don't you understand? Mama chose you because you deserved to be chosen. I exist because you deserved a family, and when I'm gone, someone else will come along who needs you, because that's who you are." Konstantin looked up at his daughter and saw Elena in her eyes. That same fierce compassion, that same refusal to accept darkness as final. "You're so much like her," he whispered. "I hope so." And for the first time since Elena died, Konstantin felt something other than grief. Hope. Epilogue. 20 years later, Konstantin stood in the garden at midnight, white roses blooming around him in impossible profusion. The manor was quiet, but not empty. Irina had been here last month, bringing her 3 children, Konstantin's grandchildren, mortal and beautiful and loud with life. They were 12, 9, and 7 now. Old enough to understand that their grandfather was different, young enough not to be afraid. He'd taught them to read Latin, to identify medicinal herbs, to understand that survival was sacred and that mercy was the highest form of strength. They'd listened with wide eyes, asking questions Elena would have asked, laughing at jokes Elena would have laughed at. And when they'd left, promising to return at summer's end, Konstantin had stood at the gates watching until they disappeared into the forest. Then he'd returned to the garden, to Elena. He knelt beside her grave now, as he did every night, and spoke to her. "Irina is well. The children are brilliant, especially the eldest. She reminds me of you. Too smart, too curious, too brave for her own good." He smiled. I told them about you today, about the woman who chose love over fear. They wanted to know if you were beautiful. I said you were the most beautiful person I'd ever known, not because of how you looked, but because of how you made the world feel less empty. The roses rustled in a breeze that shouldn't exist in the still night air. Constantine closed his eyes and pretended it was Elena's response. I kept my promises, all of them. The manor is alive again, not just during visits, but always. I've opened the library to scholars who need sanctuary. The garden feeds travelers who are hungry. Last year, I saved a girl from a trafficking ring. The year before, a boy fleeing his abusive father. They stay until they're strong enough to leave, and then they go, and I remain. He touched the stone marker gently. Just like you said, I keep saving people, I keep living. I keep making this existence mean something beyond penance. Another breeze, stronger this time. Constantine opened his eyes and looked at the stars. But I need you to know something, Elena. Something I never said when you were alive, because I didn't want to burden you with it. He paused, gathering courage for a confession he'd carried for 20 years. You saved me more than I saved you. That night in the church, when I pulled you from those chains, I thought I was being heroic, merciful, fulfilling my purpose. But the truth is, I needed you just as much as you needed me. Maybe more. Because you reminded me what it meant to be human. To feel joy. To believe that love was worth the pain of loss. His voice broke. And you were right. God, you were so right. These 23 years with you, these 20 years since, watching Irina grow and build a family and carry your legacy forward, it's been worth everything. Every moment of grief, every night of loneliness, every century of surviving when I wanted to die. He stood slowly, his body moving with the fluid grace of something not quite human. So thank you, Elena Verona, for seeing a monster and calling him human. For choosing mortality with me over eternity without me, for giving me Irina, for teaching me that life is measured not in years, but in moments that change you forever. Constantine pressed his hand to the gravestone one last time. I will love you until the stars die, and when my time finally comes, however many centuries from now, I will find you. And we will have eternity then. But until that day, I will honor you by living, by saving, by being the man you believed I was. He turned to leave, then stopped. One more thing needed to be said. They called you a monster, Elena. Those villagers who chained you and prepared to hang you. They were wrong. You were never a monster. You were a survivor who refused to apologize for living. And you taught me that survival, choosing to exist despite everything that tells you not to, is the most sacred form of defiance. The wind rose, carrying the scent of roses through the garden, and Constantine could almost hear Elena's voice. Then we are the same, my love. Then we are the same. He smiled and walked back toward the manor, where light burned in the windows, where books waited to be read, where the next person who needed sanctuary would find it. Because that's what Elena would have wanted. And honoring her meant choosing life. Every single day. Subscribe if you believe mercy can resurrect even the damned, and that sometimes the greatest love is choosing mortality together. Comment below. Would you choose 23 years of sacred love over an eternity of loneliness? Like if you believe some souls are worth carrying forever, and that Elena Verona was one of them. They called her a monster, until the alpha vampire said, then we are the same. And in choosing each other, they proved that humanity isn't about heartbeat or breath. It's about loving fiercely enough to make the time you have immortal.